My name is Dr. Yeong Kim. I am professor at the University of Texas at Austin, and I run the project Dual Developmental Understanding Across Languages. And as part of our Research Assistant Spotlight series, I am pleased to feature Althea Mendoza. Today, I wanted to feature Althea Mendoza because of the work she has done on my project. She has worked on my project for over a year. And during that time, she has served primarily as a research assistant in charge of my journal. I am also editor of the Journal Research on Adolescence. It's a journal that focuses on the development of adolescents from age 10 to 25. We go slightly younger and sometimes slightly older, but it's mostly about how do adolescents develop. And the journal receives about 1,500 manuscripts a year. And I have to figure out whether the manuscript we get from authors is worthy enough to be sent out for peer review or if it should be desk rejected. And Althea has done a really amazing job in working with me. So I would tell Althea, these are the things that I'm looking for when I am wanting to send a paper out for peer review or desk reject. And Althea and I meet about these manuscripts, and she and I would exchange ideas about, what are the things that I'm looking for. And Althea is really great at telling me when I had some criteria that I may be going against, and then she'll call me on that. And then we come to a sort of like a mutual decision on which manuscripts I would want to send out. And she also does a lot of the administrative work in helping me work as an editor to be more efficient with the journal. And the other way in which Althea really shined as a research assistant to be featured as part of our Research Assistant Spotlight series is that Althea was also a HDFS, Human Development Family Sciences, honors student. So Human Development Family Sciences has an honors program, and Althea started the honors program last summer. And within 2 semesters, last fall and this spring, Althea was able to complete her honors thesis, and she finished kind of earlier in the month. And we were working with Althea and figuring out how to do the literature review. We work with a graduate student who did the data analyses, and Althea worked in helping to create and create the tables and figures and write the entire honors thesis. And she recently finished that and was also able to present her research at the Undergraduate Research Forum at the College of Natural Sciences. And when a student finishes a honors thesis, it has to not only be supervised by me, but it has to also be read by a second reader, a faculty member who's tenured or tenured track in our department. And that faculty member has to also pass the honors thesis for Althea to be able to get the honors designation. And when we sent our honors thesis to that second reader, the faculty member sent us an email as he, was summarizing the comments about anything that needed to be changed. And he said, this is a quote, "Let me first say that you did an excellent job. This is easily one of the best honors thesis I've ever read. Well done." And so when that faculty member wrote that, I felt exactly the same way. It really is one of the best honors theses I've ever read, not only in terms of the ones I supervised, but also the ones that I had read for other students who are honor students in the program as well. And so I just wanted to hear from Althea after now having introduced Althea's amazing contributions from not only helping me as doing many of the editorial work and helping me as journal editor, but also the really amazing honors thesis that Althea was able to produce. So Althea, how do you feel about being featured as part of our Research Assistant Spotlight series? And how do you feel about what I said about the work you did as a undergraduate research assistant on Project Dual, and also, what I said about your honors thesis? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, thank you for your kind words. That was really hard work and it was very time consuming, but it provided a really strong foundation to propel me towards postgraduate studies. And in terms of like presenting my honors thesis, that was the first time I've ever done something like that. And so, as nerve wracking as it was really exciting and a really like transformative experience. And then for like my work in Project Dual and Project Seed. That was also something I've never really done before. So I was coming into it with a fresh set of eyes it was something that I was excited to learn to do, especially delving into research and learning more about it. And that also propelled my interest for postgraduate work as well.
Sounds good. So tell us more about, where you're from and if there's a fun fact about you that you may want to share.
So I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and fun fact: I really love to bake for my friends and family, and so that's something I like to do.
Sounds good. And what is your major and graduation date, and what are your plans after graduation?
Yeah, so I'm majoring in human development and family sciences. I'm graduating this May, and after graduation, I am pursuing a master's in clinical mental health counseling at the University of Texas at San Antonio.
And so when you started as a research assistant on my project, like what motivated you to get started, in giving research a try?
So I really wanted to join Project Dual because I'm interested in research related to mental health and development. And so Project Dual was a really great way to gain experience in that field of research.
And then what can you say more about what you did as a research assistant on Project Dual?
Yeah, so as a research assistant, my role was to read new manuscripts that would come into the Journal of Research on Adolescence. And then I would go through each manuscript and help decide whether or not they should be sent further along the peer review process alongside with your decisions as well.
And what about your honors thesis? I'm curious about that part too.
Okay, so the honors thesis was something that I wanted to do during my time in Project Seed and Project Dual. So while I was working on the manuscripts for the Journal of Research on Adolescence, I was really inspired to do that myself and to have my own research. And so I wanted to pursue the honors thesis as a way of contributing new knowledge to a field that I really cared about.
And if there's one word or sentence to describe your experience in Project Dual, what do you think that would be?
A word to describe Project Dual, I would say, is growth oriented. They're really focused on cultivating like a culture and community of academic growth, and it's something that I see alongside not just myself but also my peers in the project.
And what would be your favorite part of being in Project Dual?
My favorite part of being in Project Dual was really growing a connection with you and learning from your expertise and your willingness to help me start my own research and to explore options for postgraduate studies. And so that's something that I will really take away the most from the project.
And what would you say are some of the new skills you developed while being in my project?
Some new skills I developed. One is definitely time management skills, as well as specific to my role would be analyzing new research and then looking at what's considered novel in the field and how to look at the rigor of a research study. And so just learning more about that part of the research process was something new that I
So
learned.
you know how you were saying like understanding the rigor and what's like novel. How do you know that? I'm curious.
So that one I learned with you. So during our meetings, I would ask questions about research I wasn't familiar with, methods I wasn't familiar with, as well as topics I wasn't really
Uh-huh.
familiar with, and how that all fits together, kind of like puzzle pieces in this broader field of development. And so, for example, things like different types of studies and how longitudinal studies are so important in developmental psychology. So that's one of the things that I learned
Yeah.
a lot
So
about.
one thing I remember is like, when we first started both reviewing manuscripts, there were a lot of cross-sectional studies papers that you really liked. Do you remember? And
Yes.
then I kept saying, oh, if we really want to understand development of adolescence, we have to have longitudinal studies. And there are some manuscripts where, as you know, it may be cross-sectional, but it still has a really profound story. So we still are interested in publishing those. So was that a surprise when I kept saying, yeah, it looks interesting, but it wasn't enough? Like, what were your thoughts as you were
Yes.
thinking that?
That part was really interesting. I didn't really know much about that at first. And so when I was reading those cross-sectional papers that were just so interesting, and I thought I could also thought was novel to the field, it was really sad to kind of let go of those papers, but I knew for sure that they would definitely be successful in other journals. And so from that experience, I learned that there's a place for research everywhere. And so just because it doesn't fit in this journal, there's somewhere for it to shine. And so I thought that was really cool.
And what is the one thing you think people don't know about Project Dual that you may want to highlight?
For Project Dual, I think it's a really good stepping stone or foundation for those who are interested in postgraduate studies, as well as a career in research. It really builds a strong foundation in terms of knowledge and skills, and they look really, really good on a resume or applying. And so it was something I would recommend for people who are interested in pursuing postgraduate studies.
And what are some changes that you see in yourself before and after being a research assistant on my project?
Yeah, so before Project Dual, I wasn't really knowledgeable in terms of what research is and how it contributes to the world of adolescent development. But then after my time as a research assistant, I came to learn how important and necessary research is when it comes to understanding development and mental health. And so that transformation is the biggest change I've seen.
And can you describe a connection or relationship you made on my project?
Yeah, one of the strongest connections I've made through the project is with you. So we did work a lot together, not just on the manuscripts, but also for my honors thesis. And so learning about different career paths and postgraduate options and that align with my research interests and academic interests was something that I had a fun time doing.
So one thing that always impressed me, Althea, is how, like, you know how we would have our meetings and then you have like follow-up things that you have to do. And I was always impressed with like how timely you were able to get them done. And so what's your trick? Because so many students, after my meeting, I have to follow up like multiple times because it's hard for them to like get everything done, I guess, on the day of. But you are so great at getting things done in a timely manner. So what's your trick for being, so good about getting things done in a timely manner and kind of actually the same days, which I really appreciated. So is it that's what I asked you to do and you knew that was the expectation, or I'm curious to see your perspective on
So it was
that?
partly the expectation, but also, so what I would do after the meetings or during meetings, I would write down a list for myself, almost like a to-do list, and then I would separate it by priority. So if there were certain things I needed to do by the end of the day, it would come first. And then I would set mini deadlines for myself. So like aiming to get certain tasks done by the end of this week or by Friday. And also it helped to communicate with you when I had certain obligations that would come in the way of those responsibilities. But it did really help to have a list for myself and to strictly stick to it.
Yeah. You know what I thought was also helpful because, the honors thesis is such a big project and there's so many parts. So I thought it was really helpful. Like when we say, for our next meeting on Monday, you'll have this done or that done. And I thought that was one of the key things that helped you like be on track and get things done in a timely manner. And honestly, to be completely honest, most students finish their honors thesis like literally right by the deadline. It is very rare to have it done almost because you finished almost a month before the
Yes.
deadline. I'm curious. I know you were talking about how being on my project kind of changed your view of research, but then what about your experience at UT Austin? Has your work at UT Austin or your experience as an undergraduate student change at UT Austin as a result of being in my project?
Yeah, so being in Project Dual definitely pushed me to be more involved on campus. So I wouldn't have gone to the undergraduate research forum, and I wouldn't have reached out to other professors to help me with my honors thesis if I wasn't in Project Dual. It did help me to seek opportunities in places I wouldn't have known existed before.
Okay. And what are some of your other significant experiences as a student at UT Austin?
Yeah, so another significant experience was my honors thesis. And so that was, I think, the most defining part of my time here at UT was being able to write my own work and present my own work and kind of have my own product out of my time in undergrad.
Yeah, and right now we are working with the graduate student who helped do the data analyses. We are working on trying to get it submitted for publication. We can't submit it to journal research on adolescents because it's conflict of interest since I edit the journal, but we are hoping to be able to submit it to a different developmental journal to publish. And for students who may be interested in applying to graduate school for master's or PhD programs, having publications is really important. And so we're hoping to get that ready for publication so that it will help Althea in the event she wants to pursue a PhD in the future. What would be some of your advice to future research assistants? And I'm curious about this in two different ways because you served as kind of helping me with the editorial role, but also in terms of the honors thesis. So I wanted to see if you could answer that question for the two different kind of big different hats you were wearing.
In terms of the role that I had in Project Dual, is definitely to prioritize time management skills. It's something that you learn and gain over time. And so I think having that in the front of your mind while you're working on this role and learning your role is something that's really important. And to not be afraid to ask for help. There were a lot of times where I also had to ask for help. And then for the honors thesis, advice for that, I would say, is to reach out anytime you're curious about anything at all. I think once you're curious about something, it's really important to follow that question because it could blossom into something bigger than what you would have expected it to be. And so to reach out to professors, especially to you, would be, I think, the biggest advice in terms of wanting to create your own research.
Yeah. So you know how you started the honors thesis like that summer, the summer where you had only 2 semesters left. So what's your
Yes.
sense? Do you think that's too much of an accelerated timeline? You think people really need to start it earlier, or you think it was just right? Because you did spend a significant amount of that summer before your last final year as a senior to, work on that. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
I think so. That summer I spent almost every single day of the week going to your lab and working on the paper and working with the graduate student. So I think if a research assistant or student really wants to pursue research and only has that amount of time, I do think it's doable if you really commit yourself to it. But I would recommend starting or giving yourself at least 3 to 4 semesters to really plan out and write and learn. I think the chunk of time that I didn't really expect that would take the most of my time would be the learning process and learning how to write and giving yourself time to make mistakes and learn from them because you won't really get it right away. And
Mhm.
so it's really important to give yourself time to learn. And so I think starting maybe a semester earlier than the time I started. So giving yourself about 3 to 4
I see. So you
semesters.
think minimum three additional, like 3 semesters rather than two. But I guess your summer was
Yes.
almost like a semester because you spent almost that entire. So then, if you were to guess how many hours a week you spent that summer, working on your honors thesis, what would you say if you were to just,
Oh wow. For the
yeah.
summer, I would say so I was working on it definitely Monday through Friday, and then I would say almost every other day I was in the lab, and then I would write from home and then bring my work to the lab. So I would say maybe about 8 hours a day for those 5 days a week. And then sometimes even longer days or longer nights for when I had a lot of revisions to complete or a lot of tasks to complete
Yeah.
that day.
So it was really like a full-time job during the summer.
Yes.
And then how about during the school year in the fall and spring?
So during the school year, because I did a considerable amount of work during the summer, I had more leeway in the fall and spring, but I did spend a lot of time. So after my classes, I would say about every other day I would spend 4 to 5 hours on writing and working on my
Mhm.
thesis. And then towards the end of my thesis, that time just trickled
Mhm.
down. But at the beginning of the semester, there was still a lot of work to
Yeah.
get done.
Were you surprised at how much time it takes when you were in the middle of it? Because
Yes. I didn't expect having to take time into account the setbacks, and so that was something I had to really work
what are some
on.
setbacks that you experienced?
Some of the biggest setbacks I experienced were working on revisions or learning how to write something that I've never really written before. So this honors thesis was the first time I've really written a research paper to that extent, and so learning how to write in the language of development and learning how to write the way a research paper is supposed to be
Mhm.
organized was all new, and I was writing and learning at the same time, and so there were a lot of setbacks in terms of having to learn and relearn again. And so I think that was the part that I had to spend the most time on.
So, you know, when you were saying, Althea, you learned and relearned again, how do you learn and relearn again? Is it through instruction from like when I would meet with you? Is it the instructions from the graduate student? Is it reading the literature? Is it like, if you could give us an idea, how do you learn and relearn? That would be helpful for like future research assistants who may be considering an honors thesis so they have an idea of what it takes, you know?
Mhm. I guess it's a combination of everything. So part of my day would be going to your lab and then showing you some of the things I worked on, and then getting your feedback on it. Then after that, I would work with the graduate student. She would give me feedback, and then she would also help me address the feedback that you gave me. So it's kind of like working on feedback while getting more feedback. So I would say that's the relearning part. So learning from you and then learning it again from the graduate student, and then learning it again when I'm working on it by myself. So one of the things that the graduate student would do, she would send me example papers from your lab and from other work that she's read, and I would almost learn the format and the way that the work is written. And then on my own, I would almost replicate or use that to write my own paper. So it's just like I was learning in different stages and then going back again and learning through those stages.
Yeah. I do think your undergraduate experience was really enhanced, right, through the honors thesis. And
Yes.
you know, there are some like undergraduate programs around the country where you're required to have an honors thesis. Do you know that?
Oh, I didn't know about
Yeah,
that.
so I was giving a talk at a small liberal arts college in Southern California. And, you know, it's a very tiny school, very different from UT Austin. And one of the things that I was so surprised by is they were saying that at that school, all of their undergraduate students are required to do an honors thesis.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the capacity at UT Austin for every student to be doing that. So, of course, we won't just call it honors thesis for students who want to do it. So, I'm curious to hear your thoughts after going through the arduous process of finishing an honors thesis. What do you think about a policy like that, where
Mhm.
every undergraduate student has to do an honors thesis? I'm curious to hear your opinion.
I think everyone should do it at least once. As
Hi.
difficult as it would be for professors to oversee that many theses and to oversee that much writing process, especially for the amount of students at UT, I think everyone should be at least involved in some part of the writing process and some part of research, because it really is the backbone of my education at UT. It's really helped me see my classes differently, and helped me understand what I was learning through my major differently, and the importance of looking at research as a way to inform not just my education but also practice. So I think anyone or everyone should be involved in at least some kind of research experience.
I see. So you mean not necessarily like writing the honors thesis because it's so arduous, but just the research process itself?
Yes.
I see. I see. And so one thing I wanted to ask you is many students do ask me about wanting me to supervise their honors thesis. So I'm curious to hear from you, like, where did you learn that it's important to do an honors thesis? Was it someone that told you about it, or you found out that it's important to, you know, for getting into graduate school? Like, I'm curious, like, what motivated you to want to do it?
So the honors thesis, I learned about that through you actually. So I remember we had a conversation this summer. I brought up wanting to talk about what kind of careers or postgraduate studies were available in the kind of field I was interested in. And you mentioned that having some sort of independent research experience is really important in terms of applying to postgraduate schools. And so I learned about that through you, and then also joining an honors thesis class. I learned from other students in that class how they also wanted to write their honors thesis to supplement their undergrad experience and then propel them forward to postgraduate studies. So a lot of the people I know who are interested in the honors thesis and who are motivated to start it is because they want to do work past undergraduate school.
I see. So, I mean, obviously, if you're thinking you want to do a PhD program, some students do go straight from bachelor's degree to PhD. A lot of times students go from bachelor's to master's degree program and then to PhD. But if your eventual goal is, of course, to end up in a PhD program, you definitely need to have done research. And like I said, having independent research like an honors thesis is only going to look better than not as, it's only going to look better and look good on your, statement and your motivation for why you want to pursue the PhD. Given how competitive it is to get into some of these graduate programs, for example, in like counseling psychology, many competitive programs, they get over 100 applications, close to some schools 300 for very few spots. So any way you can to like stand out, for example, having published or having done an honors independent project or, having presented at a professional conference and things like that. So for example, like the journal I edit, Society for Research on Adolescence, they have a meeting every 2 years. So I was surprised that even undergraduate students were attending that conference. So, remember I was mentioning earlier that I had visited and given a talk at a small liberal arts college. So one of the students where I presented at that conference, he came up to me and said, "Oh, I went to your talk." When I was at his small university, and then he told me he was attending the conference because he's interested in going into a PhD program. So he wanted to go to that professional conference, Society for Research on Adolescence, to learn more about what people are looking for, to meet potential faculty members that he may want to apply to work with for the PhD. So I thought that was really interesting. So is there anything else you may have wanted to add about, anything that we touched on during our conversation? Or is there any question that you wanted to ask me that you wanted me to answer during our interview today?
I think so, just to summarize really and add again for the honors thesis and my role in Project Dual, I think it's so important for undergraduate students to follow their curiosity and to really pursue their own research and their own work. I think it really benefits them, not just on a resume, but also their entire experience as an undergrad student, especially at UT Austin, where research is really at the forefront. And so it's something I would really encourage other students to do. And then for a question for you, it would be what kind of skills or qualities do you hope students develop most while working in Project Dual?
Thanks for that question. Honestly, I feel like the kinds of skills you said you gained is, what I'm hoping students will get from the project. So when I was returning from the conference, so the conference was at the Society for Research on Adolescence conference was being held in Toronto. And so when I was leaving Toronto to come back to Austin, as I was boarding my plane, I saw a former research assistant who was boarding the plane, but she was not in the field of adolescence right now. So I was very shocked. I thought, how in the world is it that she is attending this conference? And then I ended up talking to her, and she said that after she was an undergraduate research assistant on my project, and she was a research assistant on my project about 10 years ago. She finished her psychology bachelor's degree, and then she went on to pursue a MSW in the School of Social Work at UT. And then she said that she ended up moving to Toronto because that's where I was, leaving the airport from Toronto to Austin. And she said that now she works as a mental health counselor in like the Toronto area, doing mental health counseling. And so then she was asking me about how my project was working and all of that. And she was telling me how working on my project was her first work experience, and it kind of laid the foundation for allowing her to then follow, doing the mental health track, because she was obviously a psychology major, so she was interested in mental health. But she was saying that if it wasn't my project, like that was her first work experience. And so I know students are joining my project because they're interested in getting research experience for professional schools or graduate school or whatnot. But for some students, it's really the first time they had to keep a timesheet and be responsible for a certain task and simulate a work environment. It's almost, and it is, an internship or practicum. So I was just really happy to hear that I gave her that first experience that laid the foundation for her future workforce, and how that experience I gave her and the skills she gained kind of laid the foundation for where she is at now 10 years later. So I'm just thankful that I can allow students to network with each other, gain skills, research skills, or just work experience to, be productive citizens out in the world after they finish their degree at UT Austin. So thank you everyone for listening. Once again, this is Althea Mendoza, our Research Assistant Spotlight Series Research Assistant feature. So thank you everyone for listening.